She remembered the smell of rain on the night her life changed. The city lights of America looked beautiful from the outside. Tall buildings, glowing like promises. She believed she had arrived at a place where dreams came true. Her name was Amina. She came from a small town where hope was rare and work was scarce. When a woman offered her a job in America, it felt like a miracle. A clean job, safe work, a new beginning. Her family cried with pride when she left. They believed she was going to save them from poverty. Amina believed it too. She carried their dreams inside her heart. The first weeks were confusing. She was told to stay quiet. She was told her documents were being processed. Her phone was taken for safety. They said it was temporary. Soon, temporary became permanent. Doors were locked. Rules were enforced. Her name was no longer spoken. She was called Girl. Every day felt heavier than the last. Fear lived in her chest. She learned quickly that disobedience meant pain. Silence meant survival. She stopped counting days. She stopped hoping for rescue. America was no longer a dream. It was a cage. At night, she cried without sound. She thought of her mother. She thought of home. She wondered if anyone would ever know what happened to her. Her body was exhausted. Her spirit was bruised. But somewhere deep inside her, a small flame still burned. A voice whispered that she was still alive. She watched other women come and go. Some broke completely. Some disappeared. She never knew where they went. One woman once told her quietly, "If you survive long enough, you might escape." That sentence stayed with her. Amina learned to observe, to listen, to wait. She learned which moments were dangerous. She learned which faces showed weakness. Years passed. She grew older without celebrating a birthday. She forgot the sound of laughter. She forgot her own reflection. But she never forgot her name. One winter evening, something changed. A man made a mistake. He left a door unlocked. Her heart pounded. Her hands shook. Fear screamed at her to stay. But the small flame inside her became a fire. She stepped forward. One step, then another. The cold air hit her face. Freedom smelled like fear and hope mixed together. She ran. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not go back. She hid behind buildings. She followed the sound of traffic. Her legs burned. Her breath hurt. Finally, she collapsed near a store. A woman noticed her shaking. The woman asked if she needed help. Amina could barely speak, but she said one word: help. That word changed her life. The woman who found her wrapped a coat around her shoulders. Warmth felt unfamiliar. Kindness felt dangerous. Amina flinched when the woman spoke. Years of fear had taught her that voices meant orders, pain, control. But this voice was soft. It did not demand. It waited. Police arrived soon after. The sound of sirens made her body freeze. Her mind screamed that she would be punished, that she would be taken back. She tried to run. Her legs failed. The woman held her hands. "You are safe," she said. Safe was a word Amina had not heard in years. At the station, bright lights hurt her eyes. People asked questions. She could not answer. Her English was broken. Her thoughts were tangled. She shook. She cried. She curled into herself. A female officer knelt beside her. She did not rush. She did not shout. She said her name. She said she was there to help. Hours passed. Slowly, Amina spoke. One sentence, then another. She told them about the locked doors, the stolen documents, the threats, the pain. Each word felt like tearing open an old wound, but also like releasing poison. They did not doubt her. They did not blame her. That night, she slept in a clean bed, alone. The silence felt strange. She woke up many times, expecting footsteps, expecting punishment. Morning came gently. Sunlight touched her face. For the first time in years, she saw the sky without fear. A counselor came to speak with her. The counselor explained that she was a victim, not a criminal, not illegal. Those words changed how Amina saw herself. She was taken to a safe house, a place with other survivors, women with eyes like hers. Some were quiet, some cried, some stared at walls. Amina realized she was not alone. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Healing was not simple. Nightmares followed her. Loud noises made her panic. Men frightened her, but support surrounded her. Therapists, social workers, survivor advocates. They taught her how to breathe again, how to eat without fear, how to sleep without locking herself inside her mind. She began learning English again, slowly, patiently. Each new word felt like reclaiming power. She looked at herself in a mirror one day. She barely recognized the woman staring back, but she said her name out loud. Amina. That name belonged to her. Court dates came. She was afraid to testify, afraid of revenge, but advocates stood beside her. They promised protection. When she entered the courtroom, her hands shook, her voice trembled, but she spoke. She told the truth. She told everything. Her traffickers were arrested, charged, convicted. Justice did not erase the past, but it gave her dignity. After the trial, she felt empty. Survival had been her only purpose for so long. Now she had to learn how to live. She enrolled in school. She studied social work. She wanted to understand how systems failed people like her. Years passed. Her confidence grew. Her voice strengthened. One day, she was asked to speak at a small event. Just a few people, just her story. She almost said no, but then she remembered the women still trapped, still silent. She said yes. When she spoke, people listened. Some cried, some asked questions, some said they never knew. Amina realized her pain had power, and she decided she would use it. Standing in front of people made her heart race. Her hands felt heavy. Her mouth went dry. Amina looked at the faces watching her. Some were curious, some looked uncomfortable, some looked kind. She told her story slowly. She spoke about fear, about silence, about survival. When she finished, the room stayed quiet. Then someone stood up, then another. Applause filled the space, not loud, not wild, but deep. After the event, people approached her. They thanked her. They asked questions. They shared their own hidden pain. A woman whispered that her sister was missing. A teacher said she suspected a student was being abused. A man admitted he never believed trafficking happened in America. Amina listened. She realized her voice was opening doors. Soon, organizations began inviting her to speak. Schools, churches, community centers. Each time she spoke, her confidence grew. Her fear weakened. She trained with advocacy groups. She learned how trafficking networks worked, how victims were recruited, how laws protected survivors. She learned how many people were still trapped, not far away, not overseas, but inside American cities. The knowledge broke her heart, but it also fueled her purpose. Amina joined a nonprofit organization. She worked as a survivor advocate. She sat with newly rescued women. She saw herself in them, the fear, the silence, the disbelief. She told them they were safe. She told them it was not their fault. Sometimes they believed her, Sometimes they did not. Healing took time. She accompanied survivors to court, to hospitals, to interviews. She held their hands when memories became unbearable. Some days she went home exhausted, emotionally drained, haunted by old wounds. There were nights when nightmares returned, when her past tried to pull her back. But now she had tools, support, strength. She went to therapy. She learned that being strong did not mean being silent. Her voice became sharper, clearer. She testified before local councils. She spoke about policy gaps, about the need for survivor-centered care. Lawmakers listened. Slowly, changes began. Funding increased, training expanded, awareness campaigns grew. Amina was invited to national conferences. She stood on stages she never imagined. She wore professional clothes. She held a microphone. She spoke with authority. People called her brave, a hero. She did not feel like either. She felt responsible. Responsible to the women still locked behind doors. Responsible to the girls being lied to right now. She began mentoring survivors, helping them return to school, find jobs, build confidence. She celebrated their victories. First jobs, first apartments, first smiles. She cried when some returned to unsafe situations, when systems failed, when resources were not enough. She learned that advocacy was not always victory. Sometimes it was persistence. One day she received an email. A young woman wrote that Amina's speech had saved her life, that she recognized the signs, that she escaped before it was too late. Amina read the message again and again. She sat quietly. Tears fell. Her pain had protected someone else. That night, she made a promise to herself. She would never stop speaking, never stop fighting, never believing in survivors. She began working with national task forces, training law enforcement, teaching them how to see victims, not criminals. Some resisted, some learned. Progress was slow, but it was real. Media interviews followed, television, radio, articles. Each time she told her story carefully, not to shock, but to educate. She challenged myths. She challenged silence. Her name became known in advocacy circles, but she stayed grounded. She remembered the girl who once hid in the dark, afraid to speak. That girl fueled her courage. Amina understood now. Survival was only the beginning. Her life was becoming a bridge between pain and purpose, between silence and truth. As Amina influence grew, so did the weight she carried. Being a voice meant hearing many voices, some filled with hope, some broken by pain. She received calls late at night, survivors crying, families searching for loved ones, professionals asking for guidance. She answered whenever she could, but exhaustion crept in. There were days when her chest felt tight, when memories returned without warning, the smell of winter, the sound of locked doors. She learned that healing was not a straight path. Some days she felt powerful, some days fragile. She allowed herself to rest, to step back, to breathe. This was a lesson she shared with survivors. You do not have to break yourself to save others. Amina began writing, at first privately, journals filled with thoughts, memories, anger, hope. Then she began sharing publicly, articles, op-eds, personal essays. Her words reached people who had never heard a survivor speak before. Parents wrote that they learned warning signs. Teachers changed how they watched their students. Young women wrote that they questioned offers that sounded too perfect. She joined forces with other survivors, different backgrounds, different stories, same strength. Together, they formed a coalition. They pushed for federal policy reform, better victim identification, stronger protections, long-term support. Meetings in government buildings felt surreal. Amina remembered when she had no voice at all. Now, people took notes while she spoke. She testified before congressional committees, her voice steady, her message clear. Trafficking thrives in silence. Survivors need safety, not suspicion. Some lawmakers supported her, some resisted. She learned patience. Advocacy was slow work. Outside the public eye, her personal life grew quietly. She made friends who knew her past and accepted her present. She learned to laugh again, real laughter, not forced. She adopted a small apartment filled with light, plants on windowsills, photos of milestones. She celebrated years of freedom, each one sacred. Sometimes guilt visited her. Why me? Why did I escape when others did not? Her therapist helped her reframe the question. You survived so you could help. That truth grounded her. One evening, after a long conference, Amina sat alone in her hotel room. She felt empty, drained. She questioned whether her work mattered, whether change was happening fast enough. Then she received a message. A survivor she had mentored had graduated college. A photo followed, a smiling woman in a cap and gown. Amina smiled through tears. This was the work. She began training the next generation of advocates, not only survivors, but allies. She emphasized listening, humility, trauma-informed care. She reminded them that rescue was only the beginning. Healing required time and dignity. Her story continued to spread internationally. Invitations came from other countries, but she remained focused on America, on neighborhoods where trafficking hid in plain sight. She collaborated with tech companies, helping create tools to detect trafficking online. She worked with hospitals to improve screening, with airlines to train staff. The web of protection slowly expanded. Amina knew she could not save everyone, but she could change systems, and systems could save thousands. Late one night, she stood at her window, city lights glowing below. They no longer looked like promises. They looked like responsibility. She whispered her own name again, Amina. She was no longer afraid of her voice. With time, Amina learned that leadership came with loneliness. People admired her strength, but few understood its cost. She was often introduced as a survivor leader, a title that carried pride and pain. Sometimes she wished to be known simply as a woman, not a story, not a symbol. She struggled with balance, advocacy, rest, personal joy. Her therapist reminded her, "You are allowed to live." So Amina began to explore life beyond survival. She tried painting, cooking new foods, walking without purpose. Small pleasures felt revolutionary. She formed close friendships, people who saw her as human, not heroic. They celebrated her birthdays, something she once thought she had lost forever. At work, she faced resistance. Not everyone wanted change. Some institutions preferred denial. Some feared costs. Some questioned survivors' credibility. Amina stood firm. She learned to speak with strategy, not only emotion. She used data, research, economic impact. Her lived experience gave meaning to numbers. She collaborated with prosecutors, helping them understand victim behavior. She challenged harmful questions. Why did you not leave? Why did you stay? She reframed the conversation. Control removes choice. Slowly, courtrooms changed. Judges listened differently. Juries understood more. Amina also faced criticism, online attacks, accusations, doubts. Some said she exaggerated, some said she was seeking attention. The words hurt, but they did not stop her. She had survived worse. During a national campaign, Amina visited shelters across the country. She met survivors at every stage, some angry, some numb, some hopeful. She told them the same truth. Your life is not over. She watched women transform, from silence to speech, from fear to confidence. She learned that hope was contagious. One afternoon, she met a young girl newly rescued. The girl refused to speak, eyes empty. Amina sat beside her quietly, no pressure, no questions. She simply said, I was once where you are. The girl looked at her. For the first time, trust flickered. Weeks later, the girl spoke. Months later, she smiled. Years later, she returned to thank Amina. Moments like these carried her forward. Amina began writing a book. Not a memoir of pain, but a guide for understanding trafficking. She wrote about resilience, about systems, about prevention. She wanted readers to see survivors as whole people. Publishers were interested, but they wanted more trauma, more shock. Amina refused. She insisted on dignity. Eventually, the book was published on her terms. It reached classrooms, training programs, book clubs. People wrote that it changed how they saw the world. Her work influenced new legislation, stronger victim visas, expanded services. Each victory felt like reclaiming stolen time. Yet, she never forgot the women still unseen. On the anniversary of her escape, she returned to the city where it began. She stood near the store where she collapsed, where she spoke one word: help. She closed her eyes. She breathed. She whispered gratitude for the stranger, for survival, for purpose. She walked away lighter. As the years passed, Amina's role continued to evolve. She was no longer only responding to crises, she was shaping the future. She joined advisory boards, influenced national strategies, helped design survivor-led programs. Organizations sought her guidance, not because of her pain, but because of her wisdom. She trained leaders to include survivors at decision tables, not as symbols, but as partners. She emphasized fair pay, emotional safety, choice. Her philosophy spread. Amina noticed a shift. More survivors stepping into leadership, more policies shaped by lived experience. This was progress. She also confronted burnout. Her body signaled limits, fatigue, anxiety, illness. She listened. For the first time, she took a long break. She traveled quietly, no speeches, no interviews. She visited the ocean. She walked barefoot on sand. She watched waves return again and again. Healing felt like this: movement, rest, return. During this pause, she reflected on her journey, from captivity to freedom, from silence to voice. She understood that strength was not constant action, but sustained presence. When she returned to work, she set boundaries. She said no more often. She protected her peace. Her impact did not shrink, it deepened. She focused on mentorship, building systems that would last beyond her. She helped launch survivor-run organizations led by those once ignored. Funding structures changed, leadership models evolved. Amina watched others rise and felt pride without ownership. She spoke less about her own trauma, more about collective change. Her voice carried authority without urgency. She received national recognition, awards, honors. She accepted them quietly, redirecting attention to the cause. In interviews, she said, "This is not about me." She challenged media narratives, refusing to let survivors be reduced to suffering. She insisted on hope. One evening, after a policy victory, she sat with a group of survivors. They laughed, shared food, planned futures. Amina watched them. Students, mothers, professionals, free. She felt a deep calm. She knew that even if she stopped tomorrow, the movement would continue. That thought brought peace. She returned home that night, turned off her phone, sat in silence. She thought about the girl she once was, afraid, invisible. She spoke to her softly. "You are safe." The city outside buzzed with life. Inside her was stillness. She prepared for one final speech, a keynote she had delayed, not because of fear, but because of meaning. She wanted it to be a closing circle, not an ending, but a beginning for others. The day of the keynote arrived. Amina walked onto the stage. The audience was full. Survivors, advocates, students, lawmakers. Her heart felt steady, her voice strong. She began to speak, not as a victim, not as a hero, but as a witness to truth. She spoke about fear, about survival, about transformation. She shared lessons learned, that advocacy required persistence, that healing required patience, that hope required action. She told stories of women she had met, those still trapped, those newly freed, those rebuilding lives. She reminded the audience, trafficking thrives in silence, but voices like yours can end it. She encouraged everyone to listen, to act, to protect dignity. She acknowledged the past, the stolen years, the scars that remained, but she also celebrated progress, the women she had helped, the systems she had influenced, the lives already changed. She closed her speech with a message she once whispered to herself in the darkness: "You survived. Now you can save others." The audience rose. Applause filled the room. Tears glistened on many faces. Amina stepped off the stage, quietly, grateful. She met survivors afterward, held their hands, listened to their stories, shared guidance and hope. She returned home that night, sat by her window. City lights shimmered below. They no longer felt like cages. They felt like possibility. She knew her journey had not ended, but she had transformed pain into purpose, fear into courage, silence into voice. She reflected on the girl who once ran through the cold, who had whispered, "Help," and realized that girl had never truly been lost. She had grown into a woman, a leader, a voice, a guardian for those still unheard. And, for the first time, she smiled without hesitation, without fear, without doubt. She was free, not only in body, but in spirit. Her life was now a beacon for all who needed hope, for all who sought justice, for all who believed survival was only the beginning. She whispered softly to the night, "I am here, and I will not be silent."